I'm in the rather interesting position that with the greater the success of my colleagues who are speaking today, the greater the likelihood that I won't be speaking at these conferences in the future. Because I work at the end of the spectrum where people have lost vision, most of the people I work with through macular degeneration, and they're no longer eligible for the treatments that we have currently available, but there still is much that we can do to help them live satisfying, independent lives through trying to provide the best devices and training in the use of those devices. We're frequently asked whether there would be some kind of special glasses, stronger glasses, that would help restore vision to what it was before macular degeneration did its damage. But as you've heard today, there's two parts of the seeing process, the way the lens works and the way the film or the retina works. And we can get the image in sharp focus by giving a different pair of spectacles, but that doesn't do anything to repair the film or the retina at the back of the eye. So stronger spectacles, stronger eyeglasses, generally won't correct the problems, but I'll be describing some different types of devices that involve spectacle lenses that may be helpful. And they have to help in one of three ways. They either magnify the image, they intensify the image, or they move the image to a different part of the retina. So starting with magnifiers, many of you will be familiar with telescopes and handheld magnifiers. There are lots of devices. They all have limitations. Typically, they require a short working distance and good manual dexterity. They may interfere with lighting, which is vital for people with macular degeneration. So there have been a lot of efforts to develop entirely new kinds of magnification devices that overcome some of these shortcomings. And the holy grail of such devices used to be the head-mounted display, something that you would wear on your head that would have a camera and small television displays inside, and it would give you a closed-circuit TV system that would magnify the image. A number of these devices have been invented and reinvented over the years, and a few years ago, with the support of the Macular Society, we conducted a study comparing some of these advanced electronic head-mounted displays to people's ordinary handheld magnifiers. And the results were both surprising and disappointing in that the devices, despite all of their high-tech influences, were generally less efficient at providing magnified images that people could use to read, sign checks, identify objects on a shelf or faces. And since then, most of these devices have disappeared from the market. Not to mention the fact that when they were available, they were quite expensive, all over 1,000 pounds, some as much as 4,000 or 5,000 pounds. But fortunately, they've been replaced by something that shows a lot more promise, and these are portable electronic visual enhancement devices, which are based on smartphone, iPhone-type technology. And there are a number of such devices that cost the few hundred pounds, some as little as 100 or 200 pounds, and there are some national studies to determine whether particular devices are effective and which ones are more effective for which types of individuals. So I think that's an area that shows much promise, not least because it piggybacks onto the commercial development of smartphones, which is always important for low vision aids when they can benefit from commercial development rather than having to be funded exclusively by the sight loss sector. A more radical approach to the magnification application is to actually implant a small lens in the eye which acts as a telescope when working with the cornea. There are several such products, one of which is licensed for use in the US and the EU, and it's called the IMT, the Interocular Magnification Telescope. And we have participated with some other centers in the UK to determine whether that's an effective device, and for very special indications, it does seem to have some benefits. And if you're interested in hearing more about it, you can catch me outside later today. If we move away from devices that magnify to devices that intensify, we come back to thinking of things like the helmet-mounted displays, which can do contrast reversal or expand the contrast of an image. But as I said, those have mostly disappeared from the market. Again, looking at a radical surgical intervention, you will undoubtedly have heard about the bionic eye or the artificial retina. That's a device that could, in theory, intensify the stimulation of dying photoreceptors, but currently it's only being used in patients who have lost their peripheral vision, not patients who have exclusively lost their central vision. Which brings us to the third method for improving vision in macular degeneration, and that's to move the image. Of course, we all know that with macular degeneration, it's the macula that's primarily affected. In most people, their peripheral vision is relatively intact. So if we can move the image away from the center and put it on healthy retina, it stands to reason that there might be some benefit. And there are two ways to do that. One is we can optically translate the image, move the image, or we can teach people to move their eyes so that the image falls on a healthy part of the retina. The first method of actually moving the image optically has been tried for a good 40 years without much success. And there was finally a clinical trial that looked at the standard method of putting prisms in spectacle lenses to move the image over, and that clinical trial showed that the prisms didn't have any particular benefit. But you've heard already about the Macular Society and others that offer eccentric viewing training. That's the other method, where you move your eyes so that the image falls on healthy retina. There's a lot of support worldwide for the use of eccentric viewing, but unfortunately, there's very little hard evidence that it works. And without that hard evidence, it's very difficult to convince commissioners or members of parliament or other people that hold the purse strings to make eccentric viewing training available to the many people who might benefit from it. We are undertaking a clinical trial. We're about 2/3 of the way through, where we are recruiting a few hundred patients with macular degeneration, and some of them are randomly selected to get eccentric viewing training, and some get just the standard prescription of magnifiers. And as in all randomized controlled trials, the investigators, myself and my colleagues, can't say anything about the results because we don't know until all of the data are collected. So I can't answer any questions as to whether it works because I'm masked from having any contact with the data before it's all collected. But I will put in a small plug in for the trial, which is still recruiting patients. If you live in the London area, have macular degeneration, have a loss of central vision, and have not had eccentric viewing training elsewhere, see me afterwards, and we can discuss whether you might be eligible to be in the clinical trial. you must understand that if you were to sign up for the clinical trial, there is a 50-50 chance that you would be randomized to the no treatment group. As is always the case in a clinical trial, there's a treatment group and a control group, and you don't know in advance which you're going to be assigned to. So that is something you have to keep in mind. But we hope to be able to come back to one of these patient days in a year or so with a definitive answer as to whether or not and for whom exactly this eccentric viewing training is most beneficial. So in summary, we've got magnification devices, some of which are conventional handheld magnifiers, and some are quite exotic surgical magnifiers. We have image intensifiers, which aren't really playing a very large role in macular degeneration, although they are being investigated for other diseases. And we have behavioral training techniques such as eccentric viewing training. And I think that all of these offer a lot of hope. And of course, if you experience sight loss, we will strongly recommend that you get professional help and a low vision evaluation so that you can make the best use of your remaining vision. Thank you.
You touched a bit on the cost of some of these devices. You know, I've been into an RNIB several times over the past 5 years. I find that the magnifiers, some of them are very good, and especially the whole page ones. But why is it they're so expensive? You know, in an age of electronics where, you know, prices are coming down all the time, over the period of 5 years, I haven't seen anything come down there. Why are they so expensive? And what can you do to actually reduce the prices and make them available to more people?
That's a very important issue. As long as the devices are being developed and manufactured exclusively for patients with sight loss, it's an orphan market, and the prices will stay high. The only way to reduce the prices is to have this technology tag along with some commercial development that can help fund it for all purposes. And we are seeing new applications for tablets, for iPads and the like, and the small magnifiers that are based on smartphone technology that are tagging along with commercial developments and are coming down in price. So I think that we will see both tablet apps and small portable electronic low vision aids that cost a few £100 rather than a few £1,000. So I think there's some hope in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, the Welsh Assembly actually did a survey, and everyone in Wales gets a voucher to get a magnifier. Like, I mean, I've got an Optilec in my hand. Everybody across Wales gets a voucher which entitles them to one magnification, because they found that that was a more affordable way of being able to support the visually impaired. And I've put forward something about this to the RNIB, and they're looking into it. So if you're interested in getting involved in that, I would advise you to contact them and say, because I find it makes a big difference to my life to have one of them.
And quite importantly, the Welsh project is undergoing an evaluation and a clinical trial to gather the kind of evidence that we need to convince commissioners to provide such products. So that's a very important development. Yes, there was another question in front.
So you mentioned that one of the ways to improve vision might be to transfer the picture from the macula to some other places of the healthy retina. What about if that is done surgically by like translocating or rotating, let us say, the retina so that the picture will fall on some part of the, I mean, instead of the original macula to another place. of a healthy retina. Is that applicable at all?
Translocation surgery is something that has been tried and used fairly extensively. And one of our speakers this afternoon, later this morning, Linda DeCruz, is he speaking?
Yeah, unfortunately, Lyndon's not able to join us.
Oh, he's not able to join us, but he was one of the pioneers of translocation surgery. But part of the problem is that when you shift the retina, when you translocate it, you're putting it over the substrate that was not healthy. And as I understand it, that translocated retina then degenerates, just like the original patch of retina. Do you want to say?
Yeah, you're quite right. There are instances where repositioning the retina, the healthy retina, over a fresh bed of the underlying retina can actually improve sight. But these instances are relatively uncommon, and typically the operation, which is highly invasive, can be complicated by side effects of surgery, typically resulting in scarring and recurrent detachment of the retina. So there are particular challenges associated with that surgery, but nonetheless, the results of those trials give us some valuable information about how we might take that forward in terms of addressing regeneration of the retina surgically.
Yeah, but having said that, suppose that will be possible to rotate, will be the new, let us say, new area act like a macula, because the cells there will be probably different, yeah?
There are a number of considerations. In theory, if there's if the degeneration is limited to the neurosensory retina, that's the nerves in the retina, and not to the underlying supportive layer of the retina, then repositioning the retina appropriately can be helpful. In practice, there's typically some injury to both layers, in which case the outcome cannot be expected to be as good.
Thank you very much.
Gary, I wonder if I might ask you one other question, and that is, at what stage of the condition, which people with the condition do you think can most benefit from optical devices and the kind of techniques you're describing? Do you think they're most appropriately reserved for people with who have already had a relatively advanced disease, or do you think that other people with less advanced disease might also benefit?
I think it's pretty clear that the earlier you get help, the better. If you don't need any magnification at all, if you can perform your daily tasks with your current spectacles, then there may not be any particular advantage of getting a low vision evaluation. But if you feel that you need to get closer to TV screens or computer monitors, or you have to hold the book so close that it's hard to get it in focus, if you're noticing some effects on your daily life, then as soon as you notice those effects, that's the time to speak to your physician about getting referral for low vision care. A lot can be done early, and there shouldn't be any need to wait.
Thank you very much indeed, Gary.